I've got a big story up on foxnews.com. It's also up at OutKick today. They reached out and they said, hey, can you write something about what you think is significant as the presidential inauguration is closer and closer to happening? 4 days from now, Trump will raise his right hand, January 20th, be sworn in. And I've hammered this on the show, but I'm going to continue to do so. And I encourage you guys to go read it. I shared it from my Twitter account. Trump's win over Kamala Harris, 2024, all 50 states moved to the right, won all 7 of the battleground states, 312 electoral votes, the national popular vote. Trump's win is the least racially polarized election win in the life of almost anyone out there who is watching or listening to me right now. Not since a pre-civil rights America in 1964 has a presidential election been less racially divisive. That's because Trump massively increased his Black, Hispanic, Asian support. He won by a big margin, young men 18 to 29 years old. And in the process, I believe he has changed everything in the culture of America. And I don't think we have a picture of this, but I bet when we share a shorter version of this, we will. But when you actually go and look, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, all being at the inauguration is a sign of how much has changed since 2016 when Trump won and the resistance was out there and everybody was trying to claim that Russia had got him elected and that he was a Nazi. All that talk basically ended when he won the popular vote. But Margot McAtee, who is behind the scenes with Trump, his assistant, she does phenomenal work. She shared a photo of the CEO of Coke coming to Mar-a-Lago and giving Trump a special Diet Coke edition of Trump. Now, I've interviewed Trump, I think, 10 times now, and it has been the case that he regularly consumes a lot of Diet Cokes. He just pops them, runs through them like crazy. Man loves Diet Coke. But what does that represent? Some of you say, like, wow, what's the big deal? The fact that the CEO of Coke is showing up at Mar-a-Lago and designing a special Diet Coke for Trump is just clear and present evidence, as if we needed more of it, of the major cultural shift that has occurred since Trump won. The resistance is over. There is no shrieking ladies in vagina hats. Even the way CNN and MSNBC are carrying and covering Trump has changed overnight. And I think this is all tied in with the Washington Post. To me, all of these stories are connected. The Washington Post today essentially announced that they are doing away with their "Democracy Dies in Darkness" slogan that they emblazoned at the top of the newspaper when Trump won election. And the new mission statement is riveting storytelling for all of America. So democracy dies in darkness out. The new slogan is riveting storytelling for all of America. If that is true, kind of a bland slogan in general, but most slogans are fairly bland because they're the product of a lot of different people being involved, and there's not much risk-taking associated with them and everything else. If that is true, and Jeff Bezos now wants the Washington Post to cover all of America and not to be a left-wing propaganda rag, bravo to him. And I think it connects with the Diet Coke. I think it connects with Elon and Zuckerberg's decision and Bezos himself being at the inauguration. And I give him immense credit because he spent $250 million on the Washington Post. Down the stretch in the election, he decided that the Washington Post should no longer be endorsing candidates in a presidential manner. He has hired new people, including a top executive editor from the Wall Street Journal, who I believe is starting to try to at least create some semblance of objectivity on behalf of the Washington Post. And I give immense credit to them for the work that they are now doing to try to make the Washington Post more of a newspaper representative of all Americans of all backgrounds. I'm a subscriber. So I have a Washington Post subscription. I have a New York Times subscription. I have a Wall Street Journal subscription. I try to read all three every day. And in fact, I do. And that's because I want to have as varied of a media background and exposure, even when I disagree with things. I think you only strengthen your arguments by understanding the arguments that others are going to make. So I see all of these things as tied together. Diet Coke Trump, new slogan at the Washington Post, the cultural ascendancy of what I would call American sanity is upon us. And in 4 days, it will truly become ascendant as Trump raises his right hand and takes the oath of office to become president one more time. Imagine that you have been sitting around waiting for 9 years for Trump to be held criminally responsible for something in the United States. You finally got a conviction in the Alvin Bragg case in New York City, and Judge Merchan sitting today, and he announces there is going to be no punishment at all. The punishment is an unconditional discharge. What was the entire point of all of this? I'm going to do a deep dive on this maybe on Tuesday as well. I say Tuesday because there'll be a lot of NFL games to react to on Monday and also another college football game to react to. So I'm going to star these and make sure that I have longer form discussions with all of you on them. I believe ultimately the convictions in New York City are going to get tossed. I think this is a junk case. I think it's going to get tossed. But it speaks to the illegitimacy of this case that in the end, we went through all of this, New York City, Atlanta, South Florida, D.C. The only conviction that happened was in New York City, and there was zero punishment. And in 10 days, Donald Trump's going to raise his right hand and be sworn in as the next president of the United States. This is ultimately a win for the American public because I think it fundamentally repudiates the idea of using lawfare, trying to put your chief political rival in prison for the rest of his life. The American voting public rejected it. It's one reason I believe Trump won. But if you were out there and you've been saying, oh, they're going to get him, you've been watching MSNBC, you've been watching CNN, you allowed your brain to be rotten with Trump hate, you finally get the conviction, you finally get Trump sitting in front of the judge to receive his punishment, and the punishment is there's no punishment at all. That's where we are. A lot of people have broken brains, and in fact, far from a punishment. As a result of all of this, I believe Trump is going to be in the White House for 4 more years. You got played. If you listen to legacy media, if you watch legacy media, shouldn't you be asking yourself, how was I so wrong? And how were all these media figures I listened to for the last 9 years telling me Trump was going to jail, Trump was going to be convicted of crimes, there were going to be huge consequences for all these things that were trumped up and not in reality actual crimes, in my opinion? And then you finally get a conviction in New York City, and the judge says, yeah, unconditional discharge, there is no punishment at all. How in the world do you ever consume any of those media again?